Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'd like to call a regular board meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District to order. And Peter, can you do the roll call?
Surely. Epstein,
Present.
Schroeder,
Present.
Mediterranda,
Present.
Perot,
Present.
Dornberg here.
Okay, and Eric, any special announcements?
No special announcements, but the usual announcement. Please use the raise your hand function and all votes be taken via roll call.
Okay, thank you. Are there any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar? No? Okay, then we'll leave them as is. Are there any comments from the audience on matters that are not on the agenda? So I don't see any in the room. Are there any online?
I don't see.
Okay. And I don't notice any written comments in the packet.
There's one written comment.
There was one, wasn't there?
Yes.
Oh, in the revise. Oh. Okay.
Letter from Lenny Moore.
Okay. Okay, well, I had a chance to see that. Move on to the adoption of the consent calendar, which has the approval of the March 10th minutes, the March 30th special minutes, consent for claims and shut-offs report. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Yeah, Dornberg so moved.
Okay,
Second.
second, okay.
Epstein.
Okay.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mediterranda,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornberg, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, then we're ready to move on to item 9A, reauthorization of the AB 361 teleconference meetings. Jess, do you want to step to a microphone and fill us in?
It's that one is off if you want to use it, Jesse. You just need to turn it on, or you can just steal mine.
All right. So you guys probably got all my emails since we're all here today. The governor did not rescind his declaration of an emergency, and he doesn't have plans to anytime soon. There was apparently mass confusion across the entire state of California about this. Several special districts were confused, and then the CSDA stepped in and told us all that we can continue to hold meetings in this format as long as there's a declaration of an emergency, which the governor it doesn't look like he's going to rescind that anytime soon. And then, so we're all under the guise of AB 361 still. So that's basically it. You can, yeah, and you probably should reauthorize resolution 2112. It's already written and signed and on the books, but it should probably get reauthorized.
Do we have to do, we were doing that monthly for a while. Do we have to do it monthly or?
Yes.
If the meetings are more than 30 days apart, you have to.
Okay.
So in a month, some months you will have to, some months you will not have to.
Okay.
So I'll just go ahead and put it back on the consent calendar so that it's an easy thing to reauthorize every month, unless, you know.
So it'll be every next month.
Yes, yeah, so when you authorize at this meeting, it'll be authorized for the May meeting. And then you'll authorize for the June meeting at the May meeting. We'll just continue to do that while we're under the state of emergency.
And if any of the bills pass, state of emergency will not be necessary to continue in this format.
Yes, and that was the other thing we learned. There was two bills currently in the legislature that's in this session in the legislature that are going to make these rules permanent. And that's assuming that it passes in the legislature, and then they all expect the governor to just sign them. And everybody expects them to get passed.
And that would take effect January 1st of next year, if that happens.
Yes, and then we wouldn't have to be reauthorizing anything. We would just be under the reformatted Brown Act would authorize us to meet like this.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Then I have a motion to reauthorize. What, that's the
It
motion.
was
on that?
resolution 2112, and that's authorizing remote
Okay.
teleconference meetings.
So Peter, you want to make a motion?
I'll motion.
Got it. Oh, no, hang on. You got beaten out by Doug.
There you go.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you, Doug.
I'll second Doug's motion.
Okay. Roll call.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Minaturanda,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Don't Guy. It's unanimous.
Okay. Then we're ready for finances. Kelly?
So strange. 29. Yeah. that's right. Well, so we'll start with the consolidated balance sheet on page 29. I didn't really have any notes on the balance sheet, unless you guys have any questions.
No.
Okay, moving on to page 31 for the revenue account by fund. You'll notice that the only two funds that are showing negative are water and employee housing, which we kind of expected. Any questions on the revenue account by fund? Moving on. On page 32 of your packet, the combined income statement. I just had one note regarding the total operating amount, and that is skewed because of the way that we have to pass the property tax revenue allocation from an operating revenue to a non-operating revenue when we allocated money to electric for property tax revenues. So you can see that works itself out in the net income line. So that $450,000 G&A allocation expense is just to move that property tax revenue from the operating side to the non-operating side. Any questions on the combined income statement? Okay, we'll move on to, water on page 36 of your packet. Year-to-date total operating for water is up from plan by $20,000. And it's really good to see water actually not in a negative operating total operating line. It's something we had hoped that the new rate structure for water that we established would happen, and it's doing that. And it's just nice to see water not at a negative.
Really?
Yeah, and wastewater. Moving on to wastewater on page 37. Year-to-date total operating for wastewater is down from plan by $11,900. And you will notice a large variance in operations and maintenance. And that is due to the operator that we have working at the plant right now. But you can see it kind of nets itself out because you can see salaries and wages are down by $37,000. So it's just kind of in a different bucket because of the way that, we're paying that the temporary operator over there. Moving on to electric on page 39. Year-to-date total operating for electric is down from plan by $141,000.
Just a clarification. So the board can see my screen, which shows the panelists. So and the list of attendees as well, so that the board can see everyone that's up there for the question that came through on the chat. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, it's okay. And then you will notice that cost of goods sold for February is actually down from plan. So that what we had expected for the cost of purchase power through the winter months, it finally started to happen to where it is not as expensive as it was during the summer months. And that's Bob had, we expected to see that happen. So
Yeah.
that is finally coming through. Moving on to propane on page 42 of your packet. Year-to-date total operating for propane is down from plan by $38,000. And that's mainly due to the cost of propane. The cost of propane for the month of February per gallon was somewhere between $2.40 and $2.50 a gallon. And in the past, we weren't seeing anything more than $1.60 a gallon. So the cost of propane is up by a whole dollar, basically, as compared to previous years during the winter months.
I thought we are adjusting the cost with this, how do you call it, adjustment charge?
We do.
Yes, and
Yeah.
you do it a month after, that's why you have discrepancies, or why?
No, it's two different things.
Okay.
In the cost of goods sold, we post what it actually costs.
Yeah.
The revenue for propane is where we make up the difference between what we budgeted for the cost of propane to what it actually cost us.
So you expect next month to catch up with that?
No,
So then I don't understand.
We add a cost into the actual bill. The bill is what would actually cost us that month.
so we budget for 4 cents, 4 cents a cubic foot for propane in the propane rates.
Yes.
When the cost of propane is more than that, the difference between the 4 cents that we budgeted and what the actual cost was comes through in the propane surcharge.
That I understand. My concern is, so yes, I understand why your budget would be below. My concern is, and my question is, we don't want to sell propane at a loss, so when the price increase, the fuel adjustment catch up.
It catches up a portion of it.
So.
Not
we're selling
all
at
of
loss
it.
In some situations.
Yes, absolutely.
So why does a fuel adjustment cannot catch it all?
I don't know the specific answer to that question, Bertrand. I would have to do some math on that to figure it out.
No, maybe it's worth looking at it because I think we should sell the propane the price we pay for it, not less. So.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree with you. And that's why we need to do a propane rate study so that we can fix this whole propane problem to
Okay.
begin with.
So there is something to work on.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's propane rate study is part of next year's.
That'll be after the master plan for propane. Yes, we follow that.
So yes, we definitely agree that the way that we're trying to recapture the costs doesn't recapture all of the costs.
My assumption was the fuel adjustment would catch it all, but you're
No.
telling me it's not the case.
Yeah,
Fuel adjustment doesn't catch all of the losses. It should
Right.
catch all of the fuel losses, but not all of the losses.
Right, that's what I thought. Because the fuel adjustment this last month was 2.2 cents.
Mhm.
Adding to the 7.4
Right.
gets you to the number you mentioned.
Right. But also the 7.4, our regular propane, of that 7 cents, 4 of it is what we budget for the cost of propane.
Oh,
So
I see.
we budget the
So
cost.
there's
of-
an operating cost and a fuel cost
Exactly,
that's embedded in
exactly.
it.
There you go.
But it does come close.
Yeah,
For fuel, fuel is made whole, but the other components are not.
right.
Okay.
So my suggestion here, since we are going to have very volatile pricing in propane or fuel or energy in general in the next coming years, I think maybe we should raise the priority on these rate studies for propane to make sure we don't sell at a loss.
Yes, we should. I wholeheartedly agree. We should do a rate study on propane, but without a master plan, we don't know what the capital improvements will need to be. And so we won't be able to set a base rate that deals with all the capital. And so the commodity rate will just continue to roll, but we won't know all our costs until we finish the master plan of what all the components we're going to do are. Which will be, so we would do the propane study following the propane master plan.
So, okay, my suggestion in this case, because I don't know how fast we can actually come up with a master plan, is why don't we fix quickly the fuel adjustment so it actually catch all the changes in the propane cost?
Then we'd have to go through two 218 processes. We'd have to go through two rate study processes.
Okay. So with all the,
My suggestion also, maybe you can look at what the actual amount missing is, because I don't think it's too big.
For the
Right.
fuel part.
Yeah, I think it's pretty,
Mhm.
pretty
It's-
cement.
You see
Very
it's
big
marginal.
for the capital component.
The
Yeah.
capital, yeah, right,
Mhm.
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
on the other hand, it's going to be extremely fluctuating in the coming
Yeah.
months and years. So it's something we need to do.
And the other option is not to do a master plan and do a rate study on the back of a napkin, guessing what we think we need to do instead of being, having a professional tell us what we need to do. That is the option.
So
We'll give that all the attention it
So,
deserves.
Is that something that finance committee should look at?
I think, Favin, is just to understand what the loss is. What's the size of the current problem?
And like you said, Bob, it's marginal at best.
That's what I think. So let's at least understand the size of,
So you
What
want
it is.
finance the committee
yeah,
to look at that.
to look at that, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's all I have on February financials.
Okay,
I kind of have a question on, you skip over it on snow removal.
Okay.
So we don't know what April is going to look like. Maybe some snow, but I believe it when it's there. So probably because of the low snow year, which actually was extremely concentrated in December. So we are going to generate more money than we are going to spend. And in my recollection, we were supposed to pay something like 50K this year on loan.
Yes, if you.
yeah,
look
this
at
is
what
going to
we
be
talked
covered
about-
coming up.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
If we just hold off, we're going to
Okay,
cover it in the
okay, well,
budget plan.
If it's coming later. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's in a different area. It's coming up in budget assumptions where we talk about what we do with the surplus and
Yes.
funds. So we can talk about it there if you want, or I can.
No, I can wait budget. This is
Okay.
budget. actually.
Thank you. Okay, Kelly, you want to move on to?
To March preliminaries. On page 46 of your packet, operating revenues for March were up from plan by $39,000. And year to date, that brings us our operating revenues just slightly down from plan by about $9,000. So we made up the difference. And I have to say that the late fees that were incurred by our biggest customer for those 2 months helped quite a bit.
They call
Any-
that non-recurring revenue.
Yes. So any questions on March preliminaries? Okay, moving on then to cash flow on page 47. For the month of March, we ended at 2.79 million in total operating cash, which brings us to $555,000 better than planned. Considering the low snow year, I think that that shows that we were being very frugal in capital expenses and things like that. So I think that's a good way to end this quarter.
As much as I would like to say was our frugality, and my driving that actually was we couldn't get anything done because of Caldor fire and
Oh,
COVID.
true that.
So we had a lot of projects that should have been done last summer simply weren't done. So there's a lot of cost savings, especially materials as a result. So that's a good portion of that savings too.
Moving on to known budget variances. And the only thing updated there was the cost of purchase power through February. And you can see that that went down because of the $20,000 difference or savings from compared to budget for purchase power for February. So last month that was at like $98,000. So.
Okay, good. Any other questions for Kelly on finances?
On finance, I have a question that's not specifically for Kelly, it's more general. So am I the only one that think that the new electrical structure is a factor in having the resort making the decision to stay open until the end of April. I mean, when you start penciling what spreadsheet to see the impact on the staying open and closed, that probably makes a big difference. So
Well, they definitely asked Brandy what the cost was to run the
Yeah,
lifts.
that's a really important observation.
yes.
Yeah,
So,
because it's only a marginal incremental cost to keep it open.
exactly.
Very good.
Tell them how much it costs to open Kirkwood Inn.
Yes.
Yeah,
Please.
Memorial Day weekend.
are they?
Really interesting.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
They are gonna
I'm
go-
convinced. Yeah.
They
When
are.
they did the spreadsheet, it was marginal increase to keep. I mean, I'm sure they probably make money and so.
Yeah.
They're gonna open Memorial Day weekend and supposedly it's gonna be open year round after that.
Awesome.
Cooking in.
The
Supposedly.
Kirkwood Inn, yeah.
Good news.
Yeah.
Well, we've been told this before.
Yeah, I mean, something. Yeah.
My glass is half full, not half empty on that one.
Okay, well, in the celebratory move, shall we move on to the budget assumptions for next year?
Sure.
Okay.
So this has been reviewed. I don't know, you want to take the new one for this?
Not really.
Okay, so this has been reviewed by finance. This is,
And by ops.
and by operations. It really is just the changing. There's a few things we'll highlight that were changed, other than just the years. So this is one of the bigger changes. The CPI, we discussed it and we used a 7.0, of course, it's 7.9 today. So we might have been a little too hopeful. So we could revisit it. That's purely up to the board if they'd like to revisit that. We do set this based on the San Francisco Department of Labor Statistics CPI in June. That's what's in the rates, the rate studies. So we could definitely increase this, but when we went through this a few months ago and then more recently we used 7. So that's what we have in there. Happy to discuss that, but I'll go through all these and then, or do you want to stop there?
I was just going to say that when do we actually vote on these budget changes? Because the more we wait, the more light we may have on choosing a number.
What I will speak for Kelly. I'll just say for Kelly, she'd like to do this once and not multiple iterations. So if we do want to change it, now would be the time to change it.
Well, I would suggest 8.
But also the CPI, even though what's in the assumptions, we go by what the actual CPI is. That's why there's always a
This is for
difference.
budgeting purposes.
Yeah,
I mean, for budgeting, you know, that it looks better when you budget right than when you budget wrong. I would put 8 if you ask me, but you know, it's just.
I agree. When I saw the numbers, we were only
Yeah,
$9,000 off on $2 million.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
that's 0.5%. I'm gonna say that's pretty darn good. I wish Standish was here to emphasize that like
I
he
don't
always
know
did.
what other board members think. I would put 8 at this stage.
Happy to take direction from the whole board on that. If that's, I mean, I think that may be right. You
Yeah,
want to wait till the end or you want to go, just give me consensus or not, or stick with 7 or where are we at?
no, I think it's a good idea to have patience.
Yeah, all the forecasts on
Yeah.
the news seem to indicate it's going to be high.
Doug, you concur with that? Nod or shrug or, okay, thumbs up. There we go. I don't like having you muted, but you must have the kids running around, I'm guessing. Okay.
Well, just, I don't know, noises. Don't wanna-
Okay, so this is what you were getting at, Bertrand. So I'll go through this. There's a lot of moving pieces to this, so I'll go through it and we'll kind of stop where we are. So we're assuming the net
Before
revenue.
I'm sorry, before you get to snow removal, the other items say grow by 9%. but
That's the
propane was
adopted rate
7.
studies.
Okay,
There's no discretion in that. except
Okay.
for we could lower it.
I just wanted you to clarify that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The water and wastewater rate increases are based on the rate study. Yes, thank you.
And solid waste.
And solid waste.
Okay. All right, snow removal then.
Yeah, snow removal. So we were projecting when we wrote this to be about $60,000 better than planned. Well, obviously, it's going to be what it's going to be, but that's our projection. We also need to purchase a new trackless. It was going to happen in fiscal year 23-24. It needs to happen this coming fiscal year 22-23. So we need to buy a new trackless machine and get rid of T1. So taking the $60,000 better than plan approximately, deferring the $50,000 repayment to electric, and then considering the revenues in excess of expenses without depreciation, we're estimated to have about $143,000 to purchase a new trackless machine, which we anticipate will be about $150,000. So staff, and then the revenue is exactly what we said it would be last year, which is 676,300. So what we're recommending is to buy a new trackless, not repay any portion of the electric loan, and use a surplus plus the non-payment of the loan to buy the new trackless machine. That's the assumption that staff is recommending.
Are they available in the supply chain right now?
I do not know the answer to that, but we would, or as soon as the budget would be approved, we would order
So
it,
we'd have like,
and we'd have
yeah,
9 months in theory.
okay. We might need.
In
it.
theory. No, I agree. Yeah, the supply chain is definitely an issue. Peter, I agree. So does that answer your questions from earlier?
Yeah,
Ron?
that was the topic I wanted to discuss. Actually, personally, I am not in favor of delaying the payment back to electrical, because I really think we should try to keep this thing compartmentalized. And so currently, I mean, this year you were able to function without this extra snow track.
Barely.
I wouldn't say we got A's.
No.
There are times when we did not have enough equipment to meet the needs.
And we only
have
ran
more
one
operators.
shift.
Yeah, more
That's on
operators and
occasion.
equipment.
Yeah,
Instead of two.
so I think it definitely hurt this year.
Yeah, anyway, I would prefer in this case that we adjust the budget to reflect this capital expenditure. I think it's interesting because on other things like the payback of the electrical, I think we should stage as long as we can. But as for this snow removal, I think we should try to pay back whatever we owe to electricity the soonest possible. So this is my
I think the
recommendation.
trade-off would be if we did that, we'd have to finance this machine. And that would be a higher rate than borrowing from the electric.
Or we
So-
would have to increase snow removal budget by $50,000.
Yeah, that's the other solution.
So I think in this case, the advantage of this, in terms of the overall cost effectiveness, this is the least expensive way of doing it.
No, the least expensive way is to raise by 50K.
Okay,
There is
if
no-
we
there is no
if we don't
financing
want to
in this
raise
case.
rates,
Yeah.
this is the least
So
expensive way.
what's the cost of the financing? It's at 3%.
No,
No, it's less.
no, it's less than that. We use the Lathe, which
Yes.
has been hovering around,
1.9.
1 to 1.5. John, I think that's the ones I send you.
Yeah.
It was hovering around there. We were looking at those.
So it can borrow at 1.5 or could get a commercial lease at 6.
No, last one we did, the last commercial loan we did for the other trackless, 6.9. I think Kelly, isn't that right? It's pretty close.
I
to that.
wanted to say it was something like 8. but-
Maybe it was 7.9.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I can believe that, yeah. I would just remind Bertrand and the board, the slings and arrows from last time we adjusted snow removal substantively and increased people. To do it 2 years in a row may not be the best.
Well, I mean, it's gone up dramatically over the last, 5 years?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I know from the homeowner side, I had to explain that each year and it was
Sure.
difficult.
I like the proposal the way it is. I think it's a good compromise.
We really rely on those trackless machines. They're so versatile and for a tiny machine, they're really powerful.
Well, and we need to improve level of service from this year.
Right.
Right.
Definitely. I mean, we kind of lucked out. The last 2 months have been so benign.
But just to be clear, the question isn't, do we buy the trackless or not? The question is, do we finance $50,000 from electric for 1.5%, which, again, it's going to be like couple, $1,000 or so dollars? Or do we just build it into the rates for next year? Like, that is the question, right? We're not questioning whether
No.
we have a trackless.
No, the question is, do we repay an outstanding debt to electric of 50,000 or not?
Right.
If we don't repay that existing debt, it's not a new debt from electric.
Right.
It's
Right, I
an,
understand.
oh, okay, yeah, so, yeah,
But I'm
that's,
saying, like, the questions are the debt versus that we have with electric, or pay it and charge our customers $50,000 more.
yes,
Those are the two options. The options are not, do we buy a trackless or not versus some other of these finance, like, those are we are going to buy the trackless. I think everyone agrees with that. But maybe I'm wrong. But that's what my understanding is. The question is, do we put the $50,000 into the new rates for the next fiscal year, or do we continue to not pay back the loan?
Yes.
Is that really the question at this point?
yes, that is correct.
And the cost of the loan would be like $1,000 or something like that. Or the cost of not repaying it, I should say.
Yes, roughly.
And then since that's a one-time expense, we lowered by 50,000 the following year, roughly.
No, because then I have to start building reserves again, because we are scheduling to replace tracklesses every 3 years. And so I have to start building reserves to buy the next trackless.
Like I guess I was looking at the, would there be continued rate increase or fluctuation, right? And if you
No,
up the revenues by 50,000 this year, well, if you're not incurring a new expense next year, you wouldn't have to hold at that level for another year, right?
Well, there is more. It's 60, that's 69 the amount we owe, or 79?
no, we owe 100 and some odd. There was 2 loans.
Oh, okay, I'm
We
talking
owe-
about that. No.
So if you look at the budget from last year, and unfortunately I don't have it up, but the loan repayments were 50,000, and I'm going off the top of my head, so don't hold me to this.
Yes.
They were 50,000, 50,000, and 28,000.
Yeah, but we did 50,000 last year.
No, we did not. We did not repay anything last year.
We budgeted to repay this year.
Budgeted
To repay
to
this year,
repay
yeah.
this fiscal year, but we are not going to do that.
So what did we do with the excess
We didn't
money
budget.
last year?
We raised the rates this year, so we would have 50,000 to pay it off.
Oh.
There was no
that's
excess.
That was the
last-
reason
there was
for
no
the rate
excess last
increase.
year.
Yeah.
There was no excess last year.
Oh.
When we did the budget adoption, we were talking about this year, and that's where you started seeing the first 50, the second 50, and then the third 28.
Well, I'm not, I think it's a mistake to keep delaying this thing. We should increase the expenses, so snow removal stand on its feet. So that's my recommendation.
Okay, well, why don't we just see where everybody else stands and
Can
decide?
I just ask, just in general, what would $50,000 mean in terms, like, what can you just, how does, like, I mean, just like, what percent increase in general rates across the board does that equate to? If I were to say
Roughly 8.
about 8% increase in
Yeah, the
rate?
total budget is 676.3, so roughly 8%, a little bit under that.
Okay. And so $1,000 would be, because you budget in $1,000 at some point, right? Because whatever you have to pay out, you have to budget in the cost of not paying it back. So it's like
Correct.
you're budgeting an extra $1,000 versus $50,000. So it's 8% versus 1/50th of 8% or something like that would be what
If
you.
you factor in the fact that we have 8% inflation, or 7, 8, I don't know, it would not be unreasonable to increase by that number the cost of snow removal. People would understand it. That's basically what I'm saying.
Is there a way, is there, sorry, and I'm not as familiar with the inter-operational loans in terms of the history of them, but is there a repayment schedule that we've been trying to stick to? And is there a way to, is there any methodologies or possibilities to pay this off in like $5,000 chunks instead of in full each time? Or does that matter? Is there anything, can we budget $5,000 towards it or something like that?
Yeah, so there is a resolution with a repayment period. It was originally adopted, but nothing has ever been repaid on those loans to date.
For sure.
Okay.
I was not
I
aware. I
think
thought last year we had
did-
payments. We kept it for this purchase.
I mean, my angle, my perspective is like, I agree with Bertrand in general that it would be nice. I know that we've been trying to move towards independent, profitability or revenue neutrality across individual agencies, but I also don't want to do it like an 8% increase given all the increases that we've been doing in that. So I would rather see us maybe put smaller contributions towards it and budget a few $1,000s and start paying it down, or just not do anything at this point.
Okay, Peter, do you have a? Doug, I'm gonna take your proposal as maybe do something, but not zero.
I would be happy to do something, but not zero. But I would rather it not be the 40,000 at this point. Yes.
Well, why? I mean,
That's his proposal.
okay. Well, you said do nothing or a small amount.
That's right.
Yes, I don't think he's proposing a small amount. He's
No, right.
saying it's an alternative.
It's an alternative.
I'm okay with what's been proposed by staff.
I'm good with the proposal. I'd rather not raise the snow removal rates again and be able to improve the quality of service for next year.
Yeah, I am too. I'm fine with this. I'm anxious to sort of see how the whole thing fits together when we're all done and we factor in the increases for salaries and the rest.
I mean, historically, we borrowed from other departments to fund electricity. Now it's kind of, we're going in the other direction. I don't see it's being a problem.
The big thing, Doug, and I don't know if I've mentioned this to you in our discussions in the past, is this is not eligible for property taxes, which is why it has to take interfund loans. Same with solid waste, since they're not enterprise funds. So I can't remember if I told you that or not, but just in case I didn't.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay,
So
let's do the
we're
rest.
good. Yep, we'll keep it as is.
Okay,
That's payback.
Yes,
Payback solid waste.
solid waste.
Yes,
payback,
that's what it was.
We're up to 18 full-time staff. That's a change, which is where we are. Just using the same percentages. Because the salaries, because of the salary survey, instead of the normal 3% we budget, we put in 5 because there was adjustments to salary ranges as the board approved a couple months ago. So that's why that's at 5%, in case there's any question on that. And then operating expenses, we're assuming a 7% increase. I would speculate that the board would like that to also go to 8 because that reflects the CPI. So we would adjust that to 8 as well, correct? So that,
I think so.
It's consistent.
okay. So we'll adjust those 2 to 8. This is just the latest debt schedule of where we sit on the USDA loans, just the latest and greatest. And the COP loan, I like to see that 0. Not too far from now, and we will have that thing paid off.
although if you hold that debt, you're very sad.
Yes, if I hold that debt, I'm very sad. Then the question becomes, can we get rid of the PFC too, which we just had the meeting for? That would be another question.
That would save 7 minutes a year.
It would
right
save
there.
you 7 minutes a year. It would save Jess a lot more than that, though. Jess spends a lot of
PFC is
time-
for the Mello-Roos, not for the COP.
Oh, it's not. Oh, it's.
Yeah,
oh,
it
it's for the Mello-Roos stuff. We can't get rid of it until
That's paid off.
until the Mello-Roos is paid off.
Let's see.
Can you remind me what year that is?
I think it's 2035, if I remember correctly.
So by then I should have one of those mugs.
So then we did put in the wastewater treatment plant in there. Just a brief discussion of how we would phase it over 3 years. With RUS funding, the ultimate payback, but with CoBank is our interim financing, which hopefully we'll have at a meeting with the 2 Russ personnel. Will give me dates so we can set up that meeting next week with everybody to get that sorted. So the big corrections compared to last year's budget is the 5% we talked about. I will adjust this to an 8% CPI as the budget assumptions. So with those changes, does the board approve of those for us proceeding forward?
Yeah, were you going to do the operating capital? That's another meeting.
That's another meeting.
Okay,
yes.
all right. Okay. Any other comments then? We'll proceed with us. Okay.
You don't need a motion. Let's just go for consensus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Okay, then we'll move on to performance reporting and aquifer levels. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
These are materials.
Yeah, to bring to you.
Just bring it to me.
Okay, sure.
Thanks. Drive safe.
Thank you.
Ooh, dust bowl out there.
Until the culverts are rolling, it's not windy, Peter. You know that by now.
Oh, they get- I think they already have them on the other side of the highway.
All right, well, hi, everyone.
Hello.
Performance reporting for the month of March. We had slightly lower than expected sales in electric. Our losses for the month were 11%. Brings us to 14% for the year. Our goal is 12%, so we're hopeful that that will continue to come down. 11% is about right on track. You'll see another negative in propane. So we did meter significantly less propane than we expected to, or that we budgeted for. We're showing a negative 6% loss for the month, negative 3% for the year. I did take a look back after the last meeting, and from the performance reporting that we have on record, we vary somewhat between a positive 4% and a negative 4% loss each year. It generally steadies about 0. Any questions on that before we move to water, wastewater? Okay. Water, we metered more, slightly more than we budgeted for at 1.4 million gallons for the month. We had an 8% loss for the month, bringing us to 11% for the year. So water is looking pretty good on a year-to-date basis. And wastewater, we're starting to see, we started to see in February, but March, we're starting to see more I&I from the temperatures and the melting snow. We had a 2.7 million gallons metered coming into our plant. Of that, 47% is unidentified, which means water getting into the system that's not going down someone's drain. Looking at previous years, the average for March is about 42%. So this is a little high. We did, as we'll see in just a minute, we did have a very warm March. So that is impacting this. But we're also anticipating needing to do some repairs from the Caldor fire work. Questions on that before we start looking at
Another
graphs?
question is almost an operation comment. On Fremont, there is a running creek of melting water, snow that goes straight to
Manhole.
a manhole.
Oh,
Yeah, so
okay.
I don't know if we could do something to reduce that. but
We're on Fremont.
I would say pretty close from Peter. I would say a
Between
bit more
Peter and
south
that
than
court?
Peter. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Walbrun's.
Yes, somewhere like that. It basically follows on the west side of Fremont, and suddenly it crosses and it goes straight to a manhole.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll take a look at that. When you see those,
Yeah.
please feel free to call me or
Okay.
let us know so we can look into it.
There's
Some of
an
the
easy
manholes
way
we've been
to fix
replacing.
that. There's an easy way to fix that is
Yeah.
direct the water into the next manhole up. It's before the next, where it crosses by between your house and Lacey's.
Yes.
And see, it's not going down there yet because the snow
Yeah.
hasn't quite melted out. I noticed that this morning.
Well, ultimately, we will be replacing all manholes with the Pamtites, and it will be irrelevant if standing water was over, it wouldn't matter. So, but it's good to know where those are so we can put those on the higher priority list. So thank you.
Somebody was out cleaning the drainages. I think it was from KPS, was it,
I
or
think it was Kirkwood Security.
Kirkwood Security?
saw
They
them
they were
out.
out there yesterday,
Yeah, I saw
I
them out.
noticed, and that really helps. Doesn't take that much shoveling to redirect that water. It's better than it was at the bottom of Fremont, where that's typically a really bad spot. So kudos to the security people. Yeah.
I was impressed too.
As far as the 47%, I agree with you. We had warm weather, so I think that's just shifting ahead.
I think so too. But we will keep an eye on that because we do want to try to pick up any issues that we can, like manholes that are
Yeah.
in the middle of creeks. but also make sure that we have identified areas where we need to do smoke testing and other mitigation this summer. We have in the packet charts. So we have the aquifer level charts, and you can see here that the aquifer level for 4 or 5 is pretty steady March to April, but it's a little lower than it has been in April. So something that we are going to be monitoring and adjusting our well operation to reflect. And then we also have the electric usage plus temperature.
Well, just one question on that. If we look at, and that's what I really like about these charts is we actually could see year over year. It tends to drift up and improve in the next quarter.
It does,
Okay.
right? We get a lot more water just into the ground in general.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay.
So just as a comment, so April is a partial month, correct?
Yeah, it's the average for the whenever this was taken.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, so you take the partial and you extend.
because
it.
it's measured every day.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's the average for whenever you did this. So it's probably 4 days in April.
Yeah, it was probably Monday when I took this. Yes. Okay. So
I think that's better than having nothing. Whatever you.
maybe I think it's great to have the average.
Yeah.
But it's kind of misleading now.
Yes, because it might act
Because the other-
next month when we see April, it might have drifted up
Yes.
from the melt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
So maybe a different representation. I mean, a circle around it to indicate it's not a normal. feeling.
It's that it's a partial month.
Yeah.
so the remaining charts are just, you can see usage over the years plus temperature. And honestly, the thing that I noted was just the temperature so far at the beginning of this year has been quite warm. So our melt and our INI for wastewater is understandably higher. Any questions on performance reporting?
I think the other thing I just noticed on the propane chart.
Mhm.
There's just a trend. You look at every month, the trend is sort of less propane being used, although not all of that is related to weather.
Also, probably the price increases. Some. That is all I have for performance reporting.
The propane usage for commercial is also for heating mostly, or it's something else?
Kitchens,
Kitchens.
all the commercial kitchens are propane.
And there is some snow melt, but that's used
I think this-
sporadically.
That's
You
been
said
turned
they
on
stop
the
it
last
now.
2 years, all of them have. So that's another reason propane's gone down. Even in the commercial, everybody shut off their snow melt.
Okay, I think that's it for performance reporting. Okay, item 9E, return of ambulance.
Even though Rick's here, I don't know if he's up to presenting on this, so I will present unless he suddenly kicks on his screen and turns off his microphone. So I've given you a way out, Rick. As you can see in the report, in 2018, the Alpine County Board of Supervisors donated this ambulance to us. As we noted a couple of years ago, we've been unable to use it because we don't have 2 EMTs, which is legally required to do so. So it's just been sitting doing nothing. Alpine County has a use for it as a search and rescue vehicle, not an ambulance. They want the body or the body back. They'll put a different shell on it. And since they gave it to us for $0, we recommend returning it to them at the same price.
I've got some questions about this proposal. It's my understanding that the the district agreed to pay for a training for an EMT, to pay for one of our volunteers to take the training, and there was a positive response that one of our, at least one, maybe two of our volunteers were willing to go to take the classes if we paid for them.
I believe there's one who's taking fire classes, not EMT classes at this time.
Oh, it's not EMT?
I don't believe so, but they were planning on doing it in the future.
It's just that I may be biased as somebody's been transported in that ambulance. I think there's nothing wrong with the ambulance. It's a shortage on our volunteers. And the fact that we've got one person that's motivated to start taking classes, I mean, I'd rather hold on to the ambulance and try to upgrade our volunteers if we can motivate them. And it seems like that by paying for the classes, that might motivate them. But that's my feeling. It's just the difference between being transported in an ambulance and being transported by one of your family members is pretty different. Having gone through it, I really appreciate it. And I know that there are other people like Carolyn Scott who's expressed the same sentiments.
I would just remind the board that when we use the ambulance, we can only go to Carson Pass. We can't take anyone.
No, we go to.
Still have to.
Okay, go ahead.
We still have to have Eastern Alpine come from that side, or AFPD or American Legion come from the west side to meet us, and they do the final transport. We're only talking about 7 minutes difference to get into the valley, so it's not substantive, and we don't have 2 EMTs. Keeping this just lets the thing continue to rot because we can't use it at all. How many ways I could say
In my experience, it was Pickett's Junction where we met the East
our
Fork.
mutual aid is Carson Pass.
Well, I just know that's where I got transferred, was at Pickett's Junction.
So currently, ambulance from Alpine and Amador come all the way to KMPUD.
Yes.
Without-
And I say Eastern Alpine, but Lake Valley also, it's Lake Valley / Eastern Alpine. It's really Lake Valley via the Tahoe Chiefs agreement we have and all that. That's where that side comes from. This side, American Legion has the contract for Amador County. They provide it on the west side. I keep pointing and I realize only you guys can see me point, so that doesn't help.
Is there some way we could get an agreement from Alpine County that if we ever do have the sufficient number of EMTs, they would help fund another ambulance for us?
Their board would have to take that up, but
Well,
this ambulance is the 2006, by the way, as well. So it's slouching towards.
I understand, but
Means, yeah, I'm glad we have a person taking advantage of the fire classes at Lake Tahoe Community College, but that's one EMT classes and 2 EMTs. We don't have anyone taking EMT classes, so let's keep this speculative on something that may or may not happen. I think we're better off to go down the course of which we're considering is, do we want to look at a paid fire department, and then you would consider how you fund that. You could include an ambulance and make them be the paid firefighters be EMTs as well, and that would solve that problem.
well, is it realistic for us to suggest that we're going to start paying?
That's what's currently being studied by the temporary advisory committee and what we're studying right now.
Question I would have is, if we do hypothetically finally hang up with both an ambulance and 2 EMT qualified person, does the district need to beef up his insurance for liabilities, or is there going to be any incidents?
I don't know the answer to that, but I don't believe so. We ran it previously, but I know there were some issues, and maybe Supervisor Woodrow, who sits on that fire board, could shed some light. There was some issues with the Tahoe Chiefs Association, how things are being done recently. So, but I don't know the answer, but I don't believe so, but I don't know that to be true. And Terry's raised her hand, so we should answer that. Hold on.
I don't have any information on that. I would have to get clarification from Chief Hughes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Terry.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Can you start searching for a nice electrical ambulance? for KMPUD?
In the spirit of moving the meeting along, because we still have a lot to cover, I think Alpine was very generous in offering this. It's sitting unused. We tried to sell it already. I think the right thing to do is to return it to them, and we have a plan when we can supply medical coverage here, then we'll buy what we need. But to hold it when they could make productive use out of it after they generously donated to us, I don't feel good about that.
I agree. And it's also going to free up another parking spot.
And there's that.
Carolyn Scott has her hand up.
Okay, Carolyn, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I guess I agree with what Bob just said. If it's sitting there useless right now, well, let's give it back so it can be useful, but let's make sure we are planning something in the future regarding our fire department, our response capabilities, and some emergency services. That's what I've been saying. I mean, I'm getting older. A lot of people are getting older, and at some point it's going to be important. So I kind of agree with Bob.
Thanks,
If you're
Carolyn.
not getting older, then that's not a good alternative either.
Thank you very much, Carolyn.
And nobody gets younger.
Okay. Is there any other?
I'll motion to accept this.
Okay, so there's a motion to accept this. Return of the ambulance.
Second,
Okay, we can do a roll call.
Sure. Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
aye.
Mediteranda,
Aye.
Perot,
I
Dornbrook, no.
Okay, well, move on. Okay, so now ordinance or item F, ordinance 22.02, changing the annual measurement period for water and wastewater.
As the board well knows, Kelly's been tracking it as a variance because it's not a loss of revenue, it's just the budgeting was off because of how we calculate everything, and we calculated after June 30th. When we did the electric rate study, we recognized that problem in water and corrected it there and decided that annual, and I'm using air quotes, would mean April 1st to March 31st. So we are recommending for the water and wastewater rate structure that we adopt ordinance 22-02, which would mirror what we have in electric, which is to define the period as April 1st through March 30th. And that's in regulation 610-01. That's the only change.
So this is something I asked for because how we calculate annually was not strictly defined precisely. So by defining them from April 1st to March 31st, they can be defined and known during the budget process instead of discovered after the fact. So it has no impact on what the rates are, no material impact on what the rates are overall, but it makes the accounting much more straightforward.
Makes sense.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to approve,
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
aye.
Mediteranda,
Aye.
Perot,
I
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, now I should also mention on this, because this was a 218 process, we'll put in the next statement a notice of this change. And so if the majority protest, no, they
No,
can't.
this is not a 218 process at all.
It's not.
It is not.
I thought we had,
No, we had to have it in a meeting and go through that, but since we're not changing the rates or the date of implementation of the rates,
okay,
you don't have to do anything like that.
all right,
But we do, so I think what you're thinking of is 30 days before any rate implementation for water or wastewater, it doesn't apply to anything else, but we've done it. We have to send in, we have to either include a statement to all of our customers or include it in a bill of here's the rate increases effective July 1st.
Uh-huh.
And because our bills go out June 4th, that technically wasn't in compliance. So we're going to do that in May, or we'll do it as a separate notice, which is what we had talked about.
Which is just stating what's already in the rates.
Correct. Stating
It's
what's
not a
already-
result of this change.
No.
Okay,
Not a
sorry.
result of
I
this change.
confused the 2 points.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, we've been talking about a lot of stuff in report serving.
No, I
That's
got
my
it.
fault. I
Okay.
apologize.
Nope, no problem. Okay, so we'll move on to item G then.
So item D is on propane. It's a different, it's not ordinance 610. So this comes, or regulation 610. This is ordinance 1601. I made 2 changes here. So I did the same year definition, but as we did in water, we defined an EDU as residential use. Because that's how it's done everywhere in the state for calculating utilities. So I included residential and the average 3-year residential usage history as defining the EDU. Just to, again, bring it into alignment with water.
Was there another change to change it to 1 year average instead of 3?
So so if you read here, excuse me, plus the base rate charge on a customer's 3-year usage history, parenthetical, which is new, where a year is defined from April 1st to March 31st, close parenthetical. And then this is what was already there, divided by the average 3-year, this is new, residential usage history, open parenthetical, this is new, where a year is defined as April 1st through March 30th, close parenthetical. So it is a 3-year.
Oh, okay.
Both.
So the change is in bold on this.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yep, exactly.
got it.
It was easier to do that than try and write a staff report and point back. So does that make, I mean, does that look good though? I mean,
Yeah, okay.
Fine, once I know.
All right.
Yeah.
So just as a comment, I compared what an EDU would be. Currently, we average all customers. And the average usage over the last 3 years was 3,602 units. I think that's cubic feet.
I think that's
Yeah,
cubic
cubic
feet.
feet.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Okay.
measuring, right, Brandy?
If you take only the residential average, then it drops to 1,748, or it's about half. So, and you saw in those charts earlier, our usage is about half residential and half commercial for the year. So that would, if we did only residential, we currently have 643 EDUs. That would then expand to 957. That would cause, in the worst case scenario, defining worst to be the largest increase, a 2% increase to the customer most affected. Most customers would be no effect because the minimum EDU is 1.
And I think the other component of this is that's on the commodity side, which is cheap, or on the base rate side, which is cheap. So it's about $1,200 difference over what. putting residential
The
versus not.
total revenue to the district is $1,600 a month more if
Than
we
what we
change it to the lower EDU. So there's,
An EDU should be based on residential. I mean, it's dwelling, estimated dwelling.
There
units,
is-
not
there is that.
commercial. Yes,
there is
so-
that D
Yeah.
right in the very
Big D.
center.
So that's what it
Yeah.
should be, yeah.
Okay, so my point is if we switch to that, it's a nominal, every dollar counts, but it's a 2% increase to the largest customer. Most customers, it's a fraction of that. And that's because the base charge for propane is so nominal to begin with.
So what I'm hearing, thinking about that going to affect people, since the minimum EDU is 1, actually people who conserve will benefit.
Mhm.
Which is a good thing to do, incentivize people to conserve.
Mhm.
Fuel for propane, yeah. Or switch
Right.
to electrical. Let's say people don't keep their propane service for hot water and stove, but they convert to a heat pump, then they could benefit by having a lower EDU.
Yeah, right. But the base rate is $6.16.
Right.
So it's not our biggest.
Yeah.
No,
It's not our hot
Well,
best seller.
that's clearly something that would need to be addressed in the next study because that
Yep.
seems to be unreasonable because I don't think we can do any capital improvement with that base rate.
Right.
I echo that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carolyn has her hand up. If the board
Okay.
doesn't have any, it's okay with her. comment.
Yep.
So I move that motion.
What we,
Sorry.
some additional comments?
Okay, how are you treating a building like the Meadows that has no propane metering per residence? And yet it's commercial electrical. How is it being treated in this?
HOAs are treated as commercial if they have, if it's a HOA meter, no matter what, it's a commercial.
Okay,
Are there other questions?
Not from the audience.
Okay, any other board comments? All right, so there'll be two changes. One is to change the measurement period, and then the other would be to switch to residential only.
So I'm moving that.
Okay. The Bertrand move. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay. Roll call, Peter?
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
aye.
Mediteranda,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay.
And Doug, just while we have a lull here, are you hearing us all well enough?
I think if Bertrand could move maybe a little closer to the microphone, that would help, but otherwise, yes, thank you to everyone for speaking clearly. And
Bring it closer. Yeah, just bring it closer to you, like set it right in front of you. Move your phone and set it right there.
Do you will me?
now just move it back about 5 meters. So
Okay, moving right on to item H, the biannual customer survey.
So it's got Eric's name next to it, but he wants me to handle this. since-
Okay.
And he's leaving. So just leaving me on my own. So the Communications Committee reviewed the 2020 customer survey, and the members revamped it. They and it's included in your packet. They took out questions that they thought were irrelevant and added some questions that they thought were relevant. And then I also incorporated the planning committee's questions about the public good benefit in there. So the draft survey is in there for your review and comments.
Okay, and Peter, do you want to provide any comments?
No, I think that the committee made some good suggestions. I guess the only question I have is from the planning committee to answer the question of whether you're a low income person or not. I'm not sure how I would answer that question personally. Is there any number that qualifies you as what's the cutoff point for being low income?
yeah, Peter, we talked a lot about that in our committee and in our discussions on that question. And the reality is that if we do the program, we would have to do a study to then determine what that number would be. And there was concerns that if we put an example number in here, then that would be confusing or, potentially benchmark it in a way that we don't want to. And so this was the best way that we could come up with, some self-identification. And, we could edit this language, meaning like, I could foresee things like, do you subscribe to other low income, like, we could say, do you qualify for other programs that qualify as low income potentially? But there was a lot of hesitancy to put in a specific number here. So that is why the question is worded as such. But that's where we landed on it, but the board can disagree and we could change it. So that's
okay. I mean, in my opinion, that there aren't many people that would qualify in our community other than the employees who live in Renwick and Animal House and Lava Rock. And are we good?
Peter, I think there was we actually discussed that, and Eric, maybe you can clarify this for me, but there was actually concerns that they might not even qualify directly because they're paid for by Vail and not by individuals potentially. And so because of that, some of those people might not even qualify directly in this program. Eric, can you correct me on that or modify that as needed?
Yeah, you are correct. The account holders for employee housing is Vail. The utility payer is Vail, not the employees. So therefore they're not customers. Therefore would not be included in the survey.
Well, they roll that into their rent. They don't get free utilities. Whereas
our utility customer is Vail, not the employees.
Did you consider, a lot of the surveys that just ask for level of income? are you, under 100,000, 200,000, over 500,000? Could that be an alternative way to determine need?
Yeah, that's another option. Certainly, John, we could reword that to be bucket ranges that we estimate would be benchmarking it in the right ways. I don't know what exactly those buckets would be. Eric and I could work on that together, but that is certainly another way to approach this for sure.
But we would have to do an income study or a low income assessment study if we want to provide any low income assistance benefits.
Yeah.
So that's 40,000 we're gonna be throwing at, which is,
Yeah, I just thought for
Well, I-
the,
but I think
if you
the
wanted,
survey,
if you want the information to get an idea of what the population would be that
Right.
might be in need.
yeah, we could ask on this. Yeah,
Even,
absolutely.
even I went to a Warriors game and the follow-up survey from that asked my income level. So it seems like you do just
What
about
were you
anything.
driving that day?
I went,
Was it that car?
I went and saw Journey in concert and I got a question, how much money you make, and they have those buckets. So it's a way to collect the information. It doesn't mean you're really going to act on it, right?
Yeah,
Right.
it makes me uncomfortable. I can't express why. I kind of like this compromise. If no one thinks they're really low income, that's data. If seeing how many people answer that is useful information, because the process of actually deciding how we might provide or if we would provide it is much more complicated.
Well, yeah.
Right now, we're just trying to get an indication as other people think this way.
The comment I would make is we should not try to reinvent the wheel. I'm not convinced we have to do something customized for KMPUD, and why not using California-wide system and that everywhere. And that's my first comment. My second comment is many of the program, low-income program, actually qualify people without looking at income if they already qualify for federal program like food stamps, like things like that. So I would try to keep it simple and use basically California-wide scheme, how people do it everywhere. Don't try to reinvent the wheel on that, and keep that option simple. That if people qualify for a federal assistance program, then they qualify for that. Period. No inquiry, no income to be done. We rely on the feds basically checking on
Okay.
that.
So at the moment, we're just deciding what these questions are. Not the
Yes.
program.
So
So are you suggesting a program B, do you qualify for any state or federal assistance?
yeah,
programs?
I would that be better than asking for a specific income. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that.
That's a good pragmatic approach.
Okay,
I'm good with that.
so we changed the question to say we're considering, do you qualify for any state or federal assistance programs?
Yeah.
Any low income state and federal.
Yeah. Doug, how do you?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was mentioning before as an option, right? Is that we could say, do you qualify for other programs as an option? And that's another way of phrasing this that we could certainly do. I would probably fall better towards one of that option, the current standard, relative than putting the buckets in, because I agree with Bob. Like, I don't think itself is identifying a ton, but I also don't think we need that information, nor do I want to really have that information necessarily at this point. So I would rather keep it more general. So either as it stands now, or ask it as, do you qualify for federal, state, or whatever local programs for low income? I'm indifferent between the two.
Now that I hear it, I like that question better.
Yeah.
Than the buckets
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, okay, good. I had a comment on one of the other questions. Should we cover that?
Sure, go ahead.
On 27, asking for priorities and responsibilities. The first one says, provide public EV charging stations. I would suggest we make that more general as opposed to us having an obligation to provide them. I would say ensure the availability of public EV charging stations, because I think they're more likely to be operated by people other than ourselves. And our role is to just help make it happen. And just when people think about that.
That works for me.
I was also agreeing with Eric Rickert comment saying that we should not ask about the treatment plan because this is done. I mean, no second guessing.
Well, it's a way to find out whether they even know what's going on.
Bob, is there anything else on that one, or can I ask?
No, that was my suggestion for that
Okay.
wording change.
I have a couple of questions or suggestions here. First is that questions 15 and 16, I think some of the numbering just might be off just because of the edits that have been made. So I just asked staff to make sure that that one is ordered correctly. 16 asks if you answered answered yes to question 17, but you're on question 16. So, and I think the one before it's referencing a skip to 19, but I think you probably want to go to 17 maybe. So anyway,
Yeah,
just
you're
catch
right,
those
Josh, I
numbers.
didn't catch that.
The second thing is there's a question 19 that's a new question, it looks like, about whether we would return to in-person meetings and we would have this. I mean, A, we just talked about this before, and there might be legislature effective January 1st where this might be moot. But I guess B, like, is there a world in which we wouldn't do this? Like, I'm just kind of wondering what's the value of asking this question in the sense of like, what information is this going to tell us, I guess?
As Bertrand pointed out, the last committee meeting, maybe last board meeting, we're going to keep doing committees on Zoom. So this does become a moot question.
Yeah.
Especially with the legislation. I agree.
Peter, you okay with dropping it?
Yeah, I'm all right with that.
Yeah, okay.
And then I just had a general question before, because Bob, I think it was maybe you that said at the last board meeting, some of these questions are the same every year. And
Right.
I'm new to this. So maybe can you help me understand, because you made the point that you wanted to have some of these questions being consistent for, kind of a longevity perspective of how this happens over time. Which questions are the ones that are always on here, I guess?
The ones in black, I think.
The things I'm most interested in to answer that question is just trends in customer satisfaction.
Okay.
So
the
there's a
first
number of,
one?
are you satisfied with it?
Yep.
And is that going up or is it going down? Those
Okay.
are the examples. Yeah, like the one that Eric has up right at the moment is a
Okay.
good example of that.
Yeah, Doug, Eric, I mean, all the questions that are in black are the old questions. And then they struck through questions they wanted to remove, and all the questions in red are the proposed questions that were added.
I appreciate that. I gathered that.
Some of
part
the
it. I
black
just-
ones
I
go
just don't know
back
how
1
much
year. some of the-
longevity of some of these are though. So like, do we always talk about snow removal services and things like that?
Yeah.
That's fine. And I guess just along those lines, have we ever asked like an NPS, a net promoter score type of, like, how likely would you, like an NPS score to summarize this in a bit? Or has it been more of just the generalized excellent, good, fair, poor type of perspective? Like, is this converted into like an NPS type of thing?
But we've never done that.
It's just an option. I mean, that's a pretty common way of, I mean, it's kind of a weird question for us because net promoters are usually like, would you recommend KMPUD to someone else? Like, you have no choice. You will use us. But it gives a numerical value, and it, people who are promoters, non-promoters, and people who are neutral. But it's, you in some ways you could convert this to an NPS in some ways as well.
Since we are moving forward on that Zoom concept, and it's probably going to become the norm, should we actually turn the question asking, are you more likely to participate to board meeting or committee meeting if they are on Zoom?
Or maybe if you had your preference, how would you like to participate in the district meeting?
Something like that, yeah.
Zoom or 7-click Zoom or in person or hybrid.
That'd be interesting feedback, yeah.
But I guess, I mean, I understand, but we're not probably going to ever remove, like, there was always a phone line before and stuff, right? Like, there's always a way to participate not being in person and being in person. So why would we ask a question? Like, does it matter to us which way people generally prefer if we're going to always offer both? Like, I just don't know what that is going to inform, like what action would we take based on that, the answers to that question.
I think it's very plausible to argue that if the majority of our customers says we prefer Zoom because it's easier for us to attend in our pajamas from our couch, then does the board actually need to physically meet in person, or the board would have those options to be 4 people on Zoom or all 5 board members on Zoom? I think that answers that question more for how the board proceeds further with their committees and board meetings.
And you're assuming that there's going to be some change in the Brown Act, right?
Yeah, I think it's
really
a
likely.
foregone conclusion according to CSDA and our
Oh,
district
really?
council.
Yeah.
They
Well,
believe people
everybody's
sign
had the
either
experience, and
one.
like the air board or the state agencies, they get so much better feedback now than they ever got before. And
I think we
that's
do
being
too.
passed on to the legislature. And yeah, so they've all seen the benefit. And the Brown Act is 30 years old, it could probably be upgraded to.
Miles Millius
Right,
Brown.
Liz? Was it
Yeah,
that?
Miles
Oh,
Millius. That's his name.
Surely there was no Zoom.
all right. Good.
Carrier pigeon.
Jess, you have what you need to go by for this? Okay, great.
Well, there's some disagreement on the question 19, eliminating or changing it. So that's something I think Jess would need guidance on.
I am very for the shortest survey possible. And I just don't see the point of asking this question, to be honest. Like, I just don't see us. Like, if the board still wanted to meet in person and still have everyone on Zoom post Brown Act, it's like, I don't see that as being a big issue, and people want to come in person, they can. If they don't, great. Like, I don't know what policy or decisions we make based off of this, because I think this is probably where we're going to be going, is having at least hybrid options. So I don't see a value of it.
It doesn't make a difference to me how it's set up, because we'll do the meetings in person and then we'll also do them on Zoom. So it doesn't make a difference to me who.
Well, what I can tell you though is Everett Water HC, for example, is 100% remote. And they have no intention of going back to in-person meetings because, just as Bob noted, their participation is significantly higher. So they will never go back to in-person, assuming the legislation is signed. So that would be the value of it, I would say, if this board wanted to go down that path as well.
So one way to word the question would be to say the board intends to provide Zoom access indefinitely. Would you attend in person? Because that's where we're trying to find out our people. Would you make an effort to attend in person, or is Zoom? Given the fact that Zoom is going to exist, would you consider attending in person or something like that?
I think would you prefer to attend in person?
Yeah, okay. When possible, would you prefer to attend in person or whatever? Can we go with that? Move on? Okay. Next item then is the summer festival.
Okay, so everyone can just disregard my staff report. There's been some developments since then, or at least disregard most of it. Some of it's still relevant. Since then, one of our dedicated committee members, Beth McAllister, reached out to Matt Jones, the GM of Kirkwood, and he discovered that there was an error in our Epic Promise Grant letter. And I received a letter saying that we were going to get $7,000 in in-kind support. It's actually, the actual number is $17,700 in support. So that's $12,000 in food, beverage, and staff support, and up to $5,700 of in-kind support. And the in-kind support is like lift tickets they give us to sell at the silent auction, the hotel packages, stuff like that. So that's great and wonderful. So that's one little piece of the puzzle here. We are still going to experience a lack of people power, even with all of the support from Vail. So we also have been informed from Vail that they don't really have food and beverage staff here this summer. They are going to open the inn, so there's that food and beverage staff there. They do have a couple weddings booked, so they have some staff there.
One of them's mine,
Oh,
not mine, my daughter's.
So there is that hurdle to come across. We also have, at this point, a lack of wine and beer vendors willing to pour. We have also one of the dedicated committee members secured a winery that will come and pour on July 2nd if we go forward with this event. There's just a lot of hurdles to cross at this point. And like I said, if we commit to moving forward, the district doesn't have staff to help set up the plaza, help clean up the plaza, and to do all that. And the volunteers we have are already volunteering ample amounts of time to plan this event. And like I said, they're reaching out to wineries and breweries, but it's just, it's feeling stressful and prohibitive, because I feel like if we go ahead and plan this event and something happens, the burden will fall on to district staff, which is Rick and myself, basically, to make this happen. So we just need a little bit of guidance from the board on how to proceed. And this was more important when we thought we only had $7,000 from bail. And I know there's a couple members of the Summer Festival Committee on the Zoom today that would probably love to provide their perspective too. They all, I know they want to continue to move forward and have this event. I just see some hurdles to come across.
good. Well, thanks for that. Let me just provide some other background and then take comments. So I did talk to Matt Jones yesterday after hearing these things. I asked him to confirm in writing to me. So he wrote back and said, we're good to go for the 4th of July weekend. Our team is ready to work with the meeting planner. I had proposed that we would hire a meeting planner, preferably named Cheryl, just so we don't have to update all the documentation, but if not, we'll deal with that. With the meeting planner to discuss the needs, what we can support for food and beverage, et cetera, and that we should help identify how much outside support vendors are needed. So one of the points that Matt and I discussed and he confirmed is it may be more practical to hire an outside caterer if there's one available to work in Alpine County, and just have a higher ticket price, but know that the food is going to be taken care of. And the issue is, in the past, Vail has prepared the food, and then we've cooked it. When I say we, the fire department has cooked it. If that's not possible this year, then we'd look, which is possible, that may be the case, use an outside vendor to provide the catering. And so, and just have a higher ticket price.
I think we need to be also prepared for any unforeseeable or maybe foreseeable event that the firefighters might not be here. If there happens to be fire in the state of California, they may be off helping fight that fire on the strike team.
Mhm.
So there's that little piece of unknown as well.
Right. So I think the question is to how to design this. It's going to be a more expensive ticket, but to use more outside services. I think is the direction where it's likely to end up. But Vail wants to help make it happen. This is the message Matt asked me to deliver.
Bobby already made my recommendation. I was going to make a recommendation.
I'm sorry.
To hire an event planner. In the
Yeah,
future.
I think that's an absolute requirement because there's too many things to take care of. So I think there are people that want to see if there are hands raised.
Yep. Beth's got her hand up. Hold on. Let me allow her to talk, and I'm sure others will come behind her. You're up, Beth, if you unmute yourself.
Oh, hi. Yeah, so, last year, just to, for the record, that was the recommendation from the Kirkwood Summer Festival Committee that we hire an event planner. Just knowing how busy KMPUD staff was, and the fact that, we had limited time from Cheryl. So unfortunately, we're now here in April when this could have happened in December. But nevertheless, I think this is really important for the community. We've been through a lot with COVID. We've been through a lot with the Caldor fire. And this event is really important for the community. So the KSF will do, whatever it takes. We typically haven't been the ones that, have ordered the tents and done that work on the plaza and done all that setup. We focused more on the auction and the fundraising. But, we're willing to contact wineries, beer vendors, in that area. But I think where we really, what's lacking then is someone to pull together everything that happens on the plaza on that day. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Eric, are there other hands
I
raised?
see Cheryl and Ann on, but their hands are, oh, there goes Carolyn Scott's hands. Hold on. Oh, there, go right down. again.
All right, when you
Moving
finish your
target.
bingo game, we'll proceed.
B17.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple comments. One is I've been participating in this since it was literally cheese and crackers and a few bottles of wine. I'm not sure it has to be bigger and better and fancier every single year, especially in light of just getting through COVID. I mean, it's about the community. And if we don't, raise $50,000, it's still a community event that we need, I think people care about. And I think it's important that we do it in person. I'm not sure if you're counting me as a vendor yet, because I didn't know who to respond to, but I'll certainly be my own vendor.
Sorry, Carolyn, you're the second vendor. We have two.
Okay. I have a couple of questions or comments. I thought that Vail usually provided that money because it was in exchange for food and beverage. Are they actually going to provide 17,000 cash to spend on a caterer?
No.
no, their proposal is identical to the past.
Okay, well then, so we would just be losing a lot of that if we hired a caterer.
We would have to have a higher ticket price to cover the food.
Well, I guess I don't really feel like the community would back that. I feel like they don't want to pay more and then get something different. And that's just my feeling. I've been there, for 35 years and I've been involved in this since day one. And so I understand the PUD staff is limited. I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I could personally do more than I have on the event day. And I have asked, I've offered my help more on the event day. And Cheryl didn't always want my help. So I'm not going to take on the whole thing, but I certainly could do more, whether it's tablecloths or tables or umbrellas or whatever it is, because I don't have the responsibilities I used to have with HOA meetings. So I could do more. I just think it's really important that we have a community event, even if it's smaller and more casual and not so fancy.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Are there other hands raised?
Cheryl. You can unmute yourself, Cheryl. There you go.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. First of all, I would like to thank Bob for reaching out to Matt Jones, and I would particularly like to thank Matt for offering to cover the staffing needs in terms of, setting up the plaza and cleaning up the plaza, because I've been involved with this event since 2006, and getting people there to get everything set up and tear it down is a huge effort, and I appreciate Vail's support on that behalf. I'm also extremely gratified that they are again donating items for the auction. Their items are always popular and they always lead to a good outcome for the fire department. So I'm very appreciative of everybody coming together. And I think it's important that we do, I'm thinking that there are some people in Kirkwood that have experience with caterers. One of them being Kendra, who's the new general manager at the rec center. And I have an email out to Kendra to see if I can maybe track down some caterers that she's used or that she's been in contact with her various work around the lake and or at the KCA. I've been gone a while, so I'm not all that familiar, but while I can't be there in person, I'm willing to make some contacts to the wineries and the breweries that I've worked with in the past. 2 years have elapsed, so maybe the people that I used to communicate are no longer there, but I think I know my way how to work through those organizations, either through some of the people that have poured for me for years, and I'm happy to assist with that part. So that's sort of my offer, if that's of interest to everyone.
I think that'd be a great help. Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
And it's nice to hear you.
Thank you, Bob.
Are there
Well,
other?
This is Rick. I'd like to add something here.
Yeah, please, Rick.
One, thanks Jessica for putting this on paper. She's expressing some of the challenges that we've had, just putting together what everybody thought would be the same event that we've had in years past. Also, thanks to Matt Jones for coming through and offering, the $12,000 for food, beverage, staff support, as well as the $5,700 in kind. But gone are the days where we have a tremendous amount of volunteer support and or all the heavy lifting that needs to get done before the event to make the event successful. And as you know, years past, the district has covered those bases by basically putting hired staff in there and paying district staff to do the work. And that can't happen this year. So we'll take a look at everybody's suggestions and comments and just know that this year's event is going to be slightly different than it has been in the past. But I also just want to let the board know that, it's very important to have a community event, but is it a community event or is it a fundraising for the fire department? And it slowly has changed over the years to a community event that's hosted by the fire department versus what it was really originally intended for. That said, it's always been very successful for the fire department, and we really appreciate everybody's support, and it's been amazing. But again, I just caution everybody not to expect the same event that we've had in 2019. It's going to be a little bit different, but we'll make it the best that we can for everybody.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Are there other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make another comment. I just want to echo what Rick said. And I also would like to note that this is about the fire department. This is about raising money for the fire department. And I feel like the focus has kind of been pulled away from that. And just as a personal note, I've been involved with other volunteer fire departments around the state of California. And when they needed to raise money, it was always community driven. And the fire department and the support staff, they just kept doing their thing. And the community supported the fire department through whatever event they could come up with, whether it was a bake sale, a pancake breakfast, or a barn dance, whatever it is, it's always community driven in my experience. And this, this is a different beast. It's a giant party that happens that historically the fire department has been involved in. I've never been part of a fire department that has fundraised in this way.
So Bob, basically in conclusion, we again appreciate the board's consideration and the community comments. Jess will set up another summer festival committee meeting, and we'll take action and figure out exactly what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And then share that with the board at the next board meeting. But I guess more importantly, one, we appreciate Vail stepping up and providing the donations. Without them, this wouldn't be a successful event. And two, also the hard work from all the committee members and Cheryl Stern and Beth and Sandy Goldberg. I mean, there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes that we really appreciate. So let us meet and let's come back to you with another idea on how this might work for us, whether that's hiring a caterer or hopefully having Vail and Vail staff basically cater the event for us and help us out. But we need to meet and come back with you with another update for you in the future.
Okay. Thanks for this update. Okay. Cheryl?
Sorry, guys. I thought that I heard Bob say that Vail doesn't have a food and beverage staff such that they're willing to provide any sort of food support this year. So it's kind of up to us to.
Cheryl, let me qualify that. He cautioned me that the only facilities for food that they would have open are the grocery store and the Kirkwood Inn.
Right.
And so how much prep they could provide, he didn't know yet.
Okay.
And I said, we were considering an option of having catering brought in. Is there any problem if we use caterers that were not Vail employees? And he said, absolutely not.
Okay.
So the difference between zero and something and full catering is somewhere in there is where the possibility is that could be figured out very quickly.
Okay. So
They're waiting to hear from us.
Okay. So we would need to make contact with Eric Tiffany, who leads the food and beverage department then, or does Matt want us to work directly through him?
I think, Cheryl, we need to work with Matt and Eric on that. We were waiting for Eric Tiffany to come back with the proposal, and Matt stepped in and brought more money to the table. So we'll do that offline and try to figure out exactly how to move forward with them.
Yeah, but Matt's also bringing the bodies that would do the setup and tear down, which we've always sort of, handed to you and said, will the fire department do this? Or, where can we find people to do this? So
I'm not counting on that at all. I don't think Matt's promising or offering that at all, because he has limited staff for the summer operations, according to Eric Tiffany, unless he's bringing in a whole new crew in that I'm not aware of. But let's meet in later date and figure this all out.
I am happy to do that, Rick.
Oh, thanks, Cheryl.
Nice
and I got your card, Cheryl. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I have Eric Tiffany's contact, and he is definitely willing to work with us. But everyone has said what he has said basically is that there's limited staff with Vail.
Okay.
Hi, I just want to say, Rick, it was good to see you, and hopefully we can meet early next week so that we can hammer this out. I feel like the clock is ticking and a lot of things need to get done in a short time. So hopefully you're back in the office and we can meet shortly.
Back in Monday, so wow. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
Sure.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Jess, thanks for your.
All right, I can go.
Let's see your help. Okay, the last item on section 9 of the fuel reduction grant proposal. So this is something we worked out with the fire safe committee and what? Firewise committee. Sorry, thank you very much. And it's a proposal that's two parts. One is the services that we would proposal of the services that we provided during the summer, which consists of a chipping program as well as the green waste bins. And in concurrent with this, the Firewise committee would put in a grant proposal. The way the grant proposal works is if it's approved, then you get reimbursed at a 50% rate for the expenses identified in here. So it's potential that if the grant happened, then our expenses we covered 50%. But then in addition, they give a volunteer credit at $35 an hour toward the match. So it's a pretty generous offer. So my proposal is that the board consider moving forward with the chipper and green waste with the capital opportunity or the grant opportunity being an upside, but not a dependency. Because if we're going to make this happen, we have to find out if a chipper is available and get it ordered right away. That's kind of the critical path. The green bins are not a problem. The grant proposal is due on April 14th, and the grant would be done by the Firewise committee with the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District as the financial agent, meaning that we would pay all the costs, account for everything, and then submit for reimbursement. So that's the general proposal, and I don't know if anyone from the committee wants to add on any additional information for that, or correct me if Beth.
Yeah, I just want to say that Alec Hogg and Sandy Goldberg have been very active in this, and they have daily conversations with the grant specialist. And we think there's probably a 30-some% chance that we could get this grant. And I think it could help pay for everything the community needs. That's why Firewise should be the applicant. That's what we were kind of counseled to do, because we can add in fire resistant tarps, we can add in tree work that residents are doing. So it's really a great thing, and we hope we can move forward. I know it's a quick deadline, but we do have a lot of help from the grant specialists, and we're hopeful that we could get awarded this grant.
Okay, thanks. So just looking at the capital costs, the main capital item is a towable commercial grade wood chipper. Peter's been
Some preliminary
coming
research.
around and thinks that $20,000 is a likely price.
Right,
for
it
that.
seems to be the going rate for a industrial grade or commercial grade, not industrial grade chipper that is appropriate for our needs. And but the question is availability, and it's the supply chain right now. And the other thing is the California emissions law, how that takes into effect what we can purchase. And also, we'd like, if we do chipping here, it would be good to coordinate with Firewise, because I think they have some preferences in terms of chip size, depth of chip that you lay down on somebody's yard, and in terms of making it not making it a relief and not an additional hazard.
Okay, so we've included that, and then we assume that there'd be two due dates. One would be sort of mid-July and the other would be mid-September. So anything arranged by then, we then send crews through to do the chipping. We assumed that it would be 4 people doing a 40-hour week at $50 an hour. So that's where that labor came in from. Obviously, it may not take that long, but that's what we did in terms of the proposal. Then fuel to operate that at the current rate of $6 a gallon. And then some professional tree work. I should mention on that when we got this, it said $15,000 per week for $6,000 total. So we assumed the error was on the side of the per week, but actually when we submit this grant, we'd probably suggest $15,000 per week for $60,000. And that would deal with large trees that are hazards or that need to be trimmed. Obviously, if we don't get the grant, that's something we might not do, but with the grant, we would do it. And then the green waste spins that we'd probably, we'd have in the budget. So our exposure would be the labor and getting the chipper. Firewise they offer a program where you buy the chipper through them. But my feeling is that would be great for next year. But I don't know that that could possibly get done in the timeframe we need. So I'm not encouraging that approach. So they might not pay back for the chipper. That's just our capital.
Right. So that,
Can
it's
we
$15,000
still
to
see-
$20,000 at risk.
Yeah.
That's kind of the price range.
Can we still explore through them? What would be the time frame?
Oh, yeah, we can do that. But I'm just saying we should.
Yeah.
The question is what's available that meets our needs that could be arrived by July 15th. That's
Shows
fine.
there is a high demand
Yeah.
and a low supply.
Well, Peter's gonna go out and find a great one. Monday. That's what he told me.
I'll try.
We'll see what we find out. But anyway, that's the suggested program and then the structure.
So Bob, I have a question. I read through the grant application and I think it's important that the board should consider whether they are ready to take on the commitment of managing basically a federal grant. Is the intent for the district to create its own defensible space program through this grant and then have Firewise do the hiring and coordinating? Or is it the opposite where Firewise is going to be hiring the labor and managing the day in, day out and turning the paperwork into Kelly to control the auditing side of it? I'm not exactly sure how that reads.
The labor we would account for and bill, what they have to provide is the volunteer labor. The documentation for how many hours of volunteer labor were provided.
Right, and we have that set up on our website already. So we have a Google form that we are going to track all the volunteer hours and the money spent by the community. So that exists. We put that in place.
So what labor is going to be running the chip? Is that district hiring?
That's
people?
district labor.
Yeah.
District hiring people. So basically the district's running this program.
Right.
With Firewise. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
And then, okay, that makes it clear for me. And then the other thing was that it said that there has to be a cost benefit analysis done to purchase a chipper. That has to be a written request approved by a grant specialist. And I don't know if Beth, if you had a chance to talk to anybody and then they're saying that's not a big deal. That's just something that part of the process.
No, we're recommending that we do not include the capital cost of the chipper in the grant because it's a special process and it's going to delay us turning in the grant. What they will try to do, the grant specialists will try to find a used one. They'll try to find a community that's maybe not using theirs or one for lease. And the recommendation was to keep the capital cost out of the grant to make this process go smoother. So I mean, one suggestion could be that we use the 501c3 funds as we did before, to purchase the previous chipper. That could be someplace where the capital costs could come from.
I see. Thank you.
So that actually raises a question for me, Beth. I know you're able to get reimbursed $35 an hour. So if the district uses our labor at $50 an hour, we're only going to get reimbursed 35 since Firewise is the grant application, the person who applied, not the district.
No, I think the cost, you'll still be able to get reimbursed at half of your burden cost, but we'll be able to apply volunteer hours toward the reimbursement. So we would get, our in-kind hours would count. So all that money would go back to KMPUD. Any contribution we come up with in kind or, dollars.
And since Firewise wants to be the lead on the grant application, you would do all the grant paperwork, the billing, the filings required and all that, correct?
Well, see, we're not the financial entity, so KMPUD as the sponsor would have to do the financial paperwork and be able to receive the funds back from the California Fire Safe Council.
But if we're not the grant recipient, how do we get the funds? We'd have to get them from Firewise, correct? That's how most grants work I've ever dealt with.
You're the financial sponsor, so all the money flows through you.
We're the fiscal agent, so all the money flows to
Yes.
us.
Because
So
we're
they
not a
separate the
501.
fiscal agent from the applicant.
Interesting.
And I've done that in other situations.
So who keeps all the records?
We do.
For 7 years or 10 years or whatever it is?
We do for the things that we ask for reimbursement.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But it's, you know,
Fact that-
it's less, it's on this, it's certainly no worse than a Rust loan.
This goes back to us hiring a grant specialist, someone to administer all this stuff, because obviously we don't have bandwidth to start doing all the administration and take on the.
Well, we would have the benefit that we would get money back that we. Are there other comments?
Yeah, I would
questions?
like just to add the fact that KMPUD is part of the Firewise Kirkwood application, should help actually smoothing stuff.
Right.
And also I'd like to thanks again the Firewise committee and all the volunteers to have done so much work in such a little time actually, because we started talking about that not too long ago, and we are really making progress here.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Okay, so the, do you need a resolution or anything, or we're prepared to move forward?
Firewise is submitting it. They need information from us, so.
Right.
Some of it we don't have, so we'll have to give them what we have and do that. When
Yeah.
Rick's back next week, we can work on that.
Okay. Good, and we'll move in an expedited way to see if we can identify a chipper.
Right.
Okay, good. General manager's report then?
I really didn't have a whole lot this period, except for, I thought I was gonna see more board member faces, but TriTac today talked about the changeable message signs that Caltrans is proposing to put all along Highway 88, and the potential visual blight therein. They're talking about a giant sign right by the gate, up to the spur, in addition to a bunch of other signs.
Electronic signs?
The big ones,
Like the one in Pine Grove?
like the one in Pine Grove.
Well,
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one, but
It's-
similar
or
to
like
what they
the
have
one
in
coming out of
Gardner.
It
Nevada,
always
the one
says
where you
the same
cross.
thing,
Yeah,
carry
they're
chains.
across the
Like
state
the,
line.
the 30-foot
Yeah,
long by 6 foot tall, big changeable message sign that's constantly, so there wasn't a whole lot of representation from the community because that light is going to shine right into East Meadows, especially anyone on Columbine, and definitely on the west side, especially anyone on Fremont. The light's gonna be right there. So there's a lot of comment today. Caltrans, I just received an email from Chuck Beatty over at Amador County, and Caltrans has agreed to provide a public meeting. The only reason we knew about this, quite frankly, and I'm glad she's still on, Supervisor Woodrow brought it to my attention. And they asked for comments when they asked for comments within 2 days of when they first sent this out to Alpine County and Amador County. We didn't receive it, even though it affects us. And under the CEQA process, we should have. So they extended it, the comment period, to May 2nd. Now, as a utility, the district has no comment other than we aren't going to be able to provide electric service to these signs unless you go through the LAFCO process, because it would be an annexation outside of service area, similar to what we're doing at Peddler Hill. So I made that comment today. Their environmental document, in my opinion, is severely deficient. We just did it for the wastewater plant, as you'll recall.
Yeah.
We had biological, cultural, and archaeological issues. They said there were none. Well, it's in the exact same area. So I found that very hard to believe, but that's their environmental document, not mine. So I don't have to put my name on it or the board's name on it. But I would highly encourage the board, and I do have the, I just got the packet from Amador County, so I can send the link out to the board. I was actually going to have Jess probably put it on the website Monday, just because our customers don't really, they aren't in the area. They don't know about it except for maybe us. So I was going to put that up. with a link to the environmental document where you can see where all these things are going. And I will send out the information I just got from Chuck about the Caltrans meeting as well. But I would highly encourage Kirkwood community to be involved and participate in this process. It does impact us directly. So
Yeah, I think we should send out a community notice, just let people know about it directly. That
I can
way.
do that. And then
Yeah.
just send to a hyperlink on the website as well.
Yeah,
Have everything
reference
there.
that. But a community
Let's
note.
work on that Monday.
Yeah.
Should we also talk to the HOA presidents because they might be
They'll
more
get it as
organized
part of the
about.
community notice.
Yeah, but if as long as they read it and act on it, they might not get what the significance
Well, with
is.
Dolan Beckel stepping down, I don't know who's driving that side anymore. We can look at that and see if we can do a little more emphasis on getting that out to whomever. Vail did participate today, by the way. Greg Kiskinen was there representing Kirkwood Mountain Resort, which was good to see. So appreciate his input. But again, without Supervisor Woodrow, this would have been swept under the rug basically completely by Caltrans. So sharp eyes. And she has her hand up if that's okay with you, Bob. You know, it's go ahead. It's my general manager report. You go, Terry. You're
Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know that Alpine County has Caltrans attending our April 19th meeting, and they're also going to give a presentation there. But I was glad that it finally got through to them that they needed to do that virtual meeting to the public also, which we just got that announcement for the 21st. So yeah, I mean, it was just kind of dropped in our laps without any time to comment.
Well, Terry, thank you for the heads up.
So these signs are what are they gonna plug into? Are they gonna operate them with batteries or what's the?
That's a wonderful question. And I asked that very question and the answer was, I don't know. We'll use solar. At 8,000 feet was my response. Okay.
It's good
I don't think
radiation.
a lot of our solar
Work
customers
occasionally.
you don't get much production in the winter, do you?
No, I do actually.
You do get a little bit?
Actually,
There's good radiation.
It
Yeah, the
depends on your
altitude's a
location.
I
benefit.
produce
Yours aren't covered by, you don't,
two-thirds
no.
of the production in winter compared to summer. It's just you have to put your things steep, which makes sense anyway because
Yeah, it keeps the
sun
snow off.
is low, and then they shed quick, and they also they produce more in winter relatively than summer because it's colder. So it does work.
It does run. Well, if you look at some of the locations, there's no sun that's ever going to hit
You
them.
have to get sun. Yeah. No
So the
sun,
answer- yeah.
no electricity.
For the one in Kirkwood, they were proposing coming in and tying in down Kirkwood Meadows Drive. And I reminded them there are no public utility easements for their benefit for that project. So they have to acquire a lot of easements. So it sounds like they put their cart well in front of the horse on this one. So that's what's been going on dealing with that. So that's the bulk of my report.
Okay.
There is no operations report. Rick's been out. So.
Okay. So standing committee reports. So finance.
Well, finance, I think there's probably good visibility on most of what we've done. That we got through the budget today. We did the vote on the RUS loan. Eric's trying to get a kind of a kickoff meeting with the investment banker, with the lender, with the RUS and so forth to get that going. It hasn't been scheduled yet, but anticipation is maybe the next week or so. Any other items?
No, I will say I did finally get a response from Mike Sterinsky, the engineer for USDA. And officially, we do not have the commitment letter from the national level, so we can't announce it or anything like that. I was reminded of that today by Tanya, so we're still waiting for the official national announcement. They publish a register every week, and we weren't on this week's. So it's done. It's not officially.
Yeah, and it's not really surprising either, right? I mean, this slip,
yes,
slip repeatedly.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
That's it. Okay. Operations.
I think we pretty much discussed everything. You
Okay. Yeah.
Going over capital. in
capital
detail.
projects. Well, yeah, that's
So that'll be coming back to the board
Right.
next meeting, all the capital. There's a lot.
Right. Okay. Communications.
well. I think An did a great job and Sandy coordinating the committee to come up with some questions. And I just want to thank them for their effort.
Okay, good. All right, and then planning, Doug, is there anything you want to add to your excellent write-up?
Just gratitude to the communications committee for promptly taking our questions and putting them into the survey. And then thank you to everyone for the feedback on that. I thought that was a good discussion earlier.
Okay, great. And then personnel did not meet between the last meetings. Okay, so that brings us to the temporary advisory committee. So emergency fire funding. One item for it.
Yeah, the emergency fire funding, we recommended hiring a rate study consultant. And that's really kind of where that sits right now.
Right. So I did reach out to a consultant I worked with extensively in the past and had a very long meeting with him. He does most of the rate study work for City of San Diego in that area, as well as Temecula County as well. So we talked quite a bit. He's going to be getting back to me in May with kind of a scope of fee. He thinks he might want to bring in a special tax specialist as well for the tax side of things versus the assessment side of things. So he has a data analyst that he's worked with on special taxes quite a bit. So I should be having something to bring back to the board, hopefully in the May meeting, or to the committee before then, and then to the board in the May meeting. So that's where that sits. But I did make contact, and he's working on pulling stuff together.
Okay, the other thing I can report on the committee's behalf is we have put in a request for $1 million for a new fire engine into the state budget. And so I've discussed that with the finance chair, which is Senator Skinner. And then Johan has discussed it with the sub chair for that committee, Senator Wachowski. And then I also asked Senator Dahl, our senator, to submit a support letter. And I got acknowledgement from Bruce Ross, his district director, that he is aware and is supportive. So I'll try to turn that into a letter. And then the budget gets hashed out with the May revise, which is in the second half of May. So if it goes through, it'll just be a line item along with thousands of others to be approved by the end of June. And so we'll have a pretty good idea of where we stand by the end of May.
Nice.
And we're not the only fire truck in the budget.
Obviously.
Okay, the electric rate design strategic planning. Doug's been doing a lot of modeling, so we'll present some results next meeting, but we've modeled various ways of looking at the AMU, and we've compared it to square footage, to number of residencies, to residency days, whatever, and it can confirm that there's no big correlation between usage and any of those factors that we put in. And then we just started modeling the demand charges to see what the impacts would be on that. We can only do it for the meters for which we have hourly information. And so there's 24 meters and a significant amount of electricity for which we don't have hourly data. So we'll analyze it just on the ones where we do have data. So we'll have some data for that at the next meeting. And that's what's up there. Okay, general discussion for the board. Have any items board members want to bring up? I just say it's really nice to be in person and see you all.
It is.
I mean, I thought Zoom was helpful, but it's really nice to not use it. And Doug, we look forward to the end of COVID. Okay. All right. With that, then we'll adjourn this meeting. Yeah, I will adjourn this meeting. The next. All right, we'll adjourn this meeting. The next meeting is Friday, May 13th at 2 o'clock. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Would you like a chocolate?